Our final section of football fundamentals deals with penalty enforcement. And our first penalty enforcement fundamental tells us the distance penalty for any foul may be declined. Fouls generally carry with them distance penalties, meaning yardage of either 5, 10, or 15 yards is marked off from the basic spot. There may be other aspects of a penalty, such as a loss of down provision, but the yardage penalty is the most visible part of most penalty enforcement. However, there is no requirement that the offended team must take the distance penalty for any foul. It is always up to them as to whether the distance penalty is to be walked off. Any distance penalty may always be declined. It is not mandatory that it be enforced. Based on the situation, it is sometimes reasonable for a team to decline the distance penalty. The implications of this fundamental. You cannot assume that every distance penalty will always be accepted. You must provide the individual making penalty decisions with all the options for penalty enforcement and then let them decide whether to accept the distance penalty or not. Our next penalty enforcement fundamental tells us penalties are either 5, 10, or 15 yards. Every distance penalty falls under one of three options. Generally speaking, the 5-yard penalties are reserved for minor rule infractions, while the 10-yard penalties are used for handsy fouls. The major 15-yard penalties are saved for the more serious of the rule violations, often involving safety or conduct. Of course, there are penalties that are only marked off half the distance to the goal line. Half the distance is in and itself not one of the distance options. It becomes half the distance based on the rule that says no distance penalty shall take the ball more than half the distance to the nearest goal line. So the penalty is still either 5, 10, or 15 yards. It is the enforcement that takes it less than one of those three. The implications of this fundamental. You need to know the distance penalty for every foul so that the penalty can be enforced correctly. Our third penalty enforcement fundamental says any live ball foul is penalized from the basic spot per 10-4 unless otherwise specified by rule. The basic spot is the beginning spot for all penalty enforcement. The basic spot is determined by the action that occurs during the down and specifically the action going on while the foul occurred. Rule 10-4 lays out the basic spots for all types of fouls. Basic spots are either the previous spot, the spot where the kick ends, the actual spot of the foul, the succeeding spot, the 20-yard line, the goal line, or the end of the run or related run. While the basic spot is the reference point for penalty enforcement, there are times a penalty will not be enforced from there. When this happens, a special penalty enforcement spot is used. One exception is the 10-4-2 exception, which says that R may enforce a foul by K which occurs during a legal, free, or scrimmage kick from the succeeding spot, as long as K will not be the next to put the ball in play. So the enforcement spot moves from the previous spot, which is the basic spot for fouls that occur during loose ball plays, to the succeeding spot. Another non-basic spot enforcement is the penalty for a foul committed by A in their own end zone. When this happens, the penalty is enforced from the spot of the foul and thus results in a safety. Fouls by the opponent of the scoring team that occur during a successful try, a successful field goal, or after a touchdown have special enforcements, as the offended team has the option as to when and where the penalties are to be enforced. The enforcement spot is the goal line for fouls by B when the run ends in the end zone and the result of the play would normally be a safety. The enforcement spot is the dead ball spot for roughing the passer fouls when the dead ball spot is beyond the neutral zone and there has not been a change of possession during the down. The implications of this fundamental. You must learn the basic spots for all fouls as well as all of the special non-basic spot enforcements in order to properly enforce all penalties. Our next penalty enforcement fundamental says penalty enforcement for any dead ball, non-player, or unsportsmanlike foul is from the succeeding spot, unless the foul occurs on a scoring play and the scoring team chooses enforcement on the kickoff per 822, 823, 824, or 825. Non-player, unsportsmanlike, and obviously dead ball fouls are all considered to be dead ball fouls and enforced as dead ball fouls, in that they are always enforced from the succeeding spot. This is true even if the foul occurs while the ball is live. As we have mentioned earlier, dead ball fouls do not combine with live ball fouls to create double fouls. Live ball fouls and dead ball fouls are kept separate when it comes to penalty enforcement. Now, it's a matter of semantics, but one or more dead ball fouls by each team could combine to, in effect, create a, quote, double foul, in that they may offset. However, this does not meet the definition of a double foul, nor do offsetting dead ball fouls result in a replay of the down. Dead ball fouls are enforced from the succeeding spot after all the action during the down, including live ball fouls, are administered. There are, of course, exceptions, and these exceptions involve dead ball fouls that occur during downs in which a touchdown is scored. If either team commits a dead ball foul during a down in which a touchdown is scored, the offended team has the option of enforcing the penalty on the try or the subsequent kickoff. The penalty does not have to be enforced from the succeeding spot. Similarly, if either commits a dead ball foul after a touchdown is scored but before they're ready for play, the offended team has the option of enforcing the penalty on the try or the subsequent kickoff. The penalty does not have to be enforced from the succeeding spot here either. However, in order to have this option, there must be a subsequent kickoff. If there will not be a subsequent kickoff, for example, if the touchdown was scored as time ran out in the fourth period, then the offended team would not have an option and would therefore have to enforce the penalty on the try. The implications of this fundamental. It does not matter if there was a change of possession or not during the down on which a touchdown is scored. If there is a dead ball foul during the down, at any time during the down, the same options exist for the offended team. Our next penalty enforcement fundamental tells us the penalty for any one of the 4 illegal passes is a loss of 5 yards and the down is not counted, except for a forward pass following change of team possession. The down is not counted is a fancy way of saying loss of down, or LOD. When there is a loss of down provision with a penalty enforcement, it simply means that the down is not replayed. So, an illegal forward pass thrown on second down means there will be a 5-yard penalty from the basic spot, and the next down will be third. If an illegal forward pass is thrown on fourth down and the penalty is accepted, there will be a 5-yard penalty marked off from the basic spot, and B will be awarded a new series, assuming A is left short of the line to gain after enforcement. If, after the 5-yard enforcement, they are left beyond the line to gain, then they're awarded a first down. The one and only exception to this loss of down provision is for a forward pass thrown after a change of possession. If this occurs, the team in possession when the pass is thrown will be assessed a 5-yard penalty from the spot of the illegal pass, and they will be awarded a new series. You cannot enforce the LOD provision to them and start the new series on a second down. We learned this in Football Fundamental 2.6. The implication of this fundamental. The basic spot for illegal passes is not always a spot foul under the new enforcement rules. An illegal forward pass is considered to be part of a running play and not a loose ball play. Therefore, the enforcement spot for all illegal passes is the end of the run. The basic spot could be the previous spot, the spot of the foul, or the succeeding spot based on where the foul occurs and where the end of the run or related run is. Our next penalty enforcement fundamental tells us no penalty directly results in a safety, but if a distance penalty is enforced from behind the offender's goal line toward his own end line, it is a safety. There is no penalty that automatically awards the offended team a safety and gives them 2 points. However, certain penalty enforcement results in a safety because of special enforcement rules. If A commits a foul in his end zone and the foul is accepted, the result is a safety. There's also one time when even if the penalty for a foul by A in their own end zone is not accepted, the result is still a safety, and that is an illegal forward pass thrown by A from their own end zone. By rule, if an illegal forward pass penalty is declined, the offended team has the option of next putting the ball in play from the spot of the foul, with the down counting, or taking the results of the play. In most instances, the offended team will always elect to put the ball in play at the spot of the foul. In the case of an illegal pass thrown from the end zone, the result would be a safety, since the ball cannot be put in play from an end zone. The implications of this fundamental. You have to be aware of where A commits a foul when they are backed up deep in their own end of the field. Move to ensure that you have a great look to see if the A player is in the end zone or not, since it makes a big difference on enforcement and could impact the close game. Our next penalty enforcement fundamental says the penalty for a live ball foul by the defensive team is administered from the basic spot, except when the spot is in the end zone. There are times when A is penalized from the end zone and not the basic spot. For example, if A throws an illegal forward pass from their end zone, it is a safety whether the penalty is accepted or not. Also, if A holds in the end zone, it is a safety since the spot of the foul is in the end zone. But the basic spot for fouls by B can never be in the end zone. If B fouls in A's end zone, then the basic spot would either be the previous spot, the 20-yard line, or the goal line. The 20-yard line and goal line would become the basic spot for certain fouls by the defensive team occurring after a change of possession. Under the newer enforcement rules, fouls by B behind the line of scrimmage during a loose ball play, fouls by B when the related run ends behind the line of scrimmage with no change of possession, and fouls by B when the related run ends behind the line of scrimmage prior to a change of possession are all enforced from the previous spot. And since the ball cannot be put in play from an end zone, the previous spot will always be in the field of play. The implications of this fundamental. There is a subtle distinction with the use of the word defensive in this fundamental. 99% of the time we use AK or BR when discussing plays and rules, and those designations do not change during the down. A remains A and B remains B throughout the entire down. However, when we look at this particular fundamental, the word defense is critical, and it refers to the team that does not have team possession. So it is not necessarily the, quote, defensive team when the down started. You have to be aware of the team without the ball in applying this fundamental. When we indicate B in the above examples, it refers to the defensive team at the snap. But when it comes to the two instances involving change of possession, it refers to the team without the ball. And we've come upon our very last football fundamental. Under penalty enforcement, it says the loss of down aspect of a penalty has no significance following a change of possession or if the line to gain is reached after enforcement. We'll now finish up our discussion of the football fundamentals by reviewing a couple of items we have already gone over. When it comes to the loss of down provision of a penalty, you can ignore it if the legal forward pass occurs after a change of possession, because all new series have to begin on first down. You can never start a new series on second down. The same logic applies to certain penalty enforcements of an illegal forward pass. If, after enforcement of the 5-yard penalty, A is left with the ball beyond the line to gain, they're awarded a new series, and the next down is first, not second. Again, no series can begin on anything other than first down. The implications of this fundamental. When a new series is awarded, it must always start on first down. It can never be nothing other than 1st and 10 to start a series. It could get to first and something else, but that could only occur after all penalties have been enforced and the chains for a new series have been set.